Welcome to a conversation with a community leader. I'm Cary, Bozeman, and I'm the host of this program, and I'm the former mayor of Bremerton and the former mayor of Bellevue. And this program is hosted by the organization Leadership-Kitsap, which is an organization that promotes and trains young people in our community who want to be leaders. And today my special guest is Carl Borg. Carl, good to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Carl is the executive director?
Correct.
Of United Way of Kitsap County, or Kitsap County United Way.
It's United Way of Kitsap County.
Okay. Well, that certainly qualifies you, Carl, as a community leader. Nobody, in my estimation, has more impact in this community than United Way. So it's good to have you here.
Great. Thank you.
I'm an old time, I run a lot of nonprofit organizations, and we always benefited from United Way. So I know a lot about United Way, and I'm a big fan of United Way. So before we talk about United Way, how about learning a little bit more about you? Where'd you come from? How'd you get started? Where'd you go to school?
I grew up in Oregon, so I grew up in a small community called Gresham, which was outside of Portland, unincorporated. Went to Gresham High School, and then after high school, I went to Oregon State. My grandfather,
You're a Beaver.
Yep, we don't root for the Ducks either. And my grandfather went there, so he was on the football team at Oregon State, so I went to Oregon State. He was extremely happy with that.
Yeah.
And then after that,
What did you major in?
microbiology.
Really?
Yeah.
Microbiology, and you're running a nonprofit organization.
Yep, I can make my own beer, distill my own alcohol, and make wine.
There you go. Well, you need to with the
Yeah.
amount of hours you put in, I'm sure.
And then after that, I started working for the Boy Scouts in Seattle. And worked
Okay,
with,
now wait a minute. You went to college, you got a degree in microbiology, but right out of school you started working for a nonprofit.
correct.
What made you want to do that?
I'm an Eagle Scout, and I believed in the Scouts.
Yeah.
And the opportunity came to move from Portland to Seattle, which I wanted to do. I'd gotten married, and we wanted to leave town because there were parents and family wanted to start our own life.
So were you working for the Seattle Boy Scout?
Yeah, the Chief Seattle Council.
Were you?
Yeah.
And how long were you there?
I was there for 8 years.
Well, did you live in Seattle, in the Seattle area?
Yeah, I lived in an area called Shorewood on the Sound, which is just south of White Center.
You have children?
Yeah, I have 3 kids. They're all, one's 27, lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, works in digital marketing. I have a daughter that lives now in Jackson, Mississippi, is an assistant women's soccer coach. And then I have one son that is working out of my house right now.
I lived a couple of years as a young boy in Jackson, Mississippi. It's hot and humid in Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah, it was 93 there yesterday.
Was it?
With about 99% humidity.
And
So
it's humid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that part. I was born in Texas and raised as a young boy in Texas, but we moved around a lot. So Jackson, Mississippi was one of our stopovers. And my uncle at the time, who I was living with, told me one day, he said, if you want to move to this place called Seattle, Washington, you can go with us. And that was when I was in the 8th grade. I never left. So
yeah, coming from Jackson, Mississippi to Seattle, I can see why you would stay.
Yeah.
It's hot.
So Boy Scouts for 8 years in Seattle. Yeah. What did you do after that?
Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers, Big Sisters in Everett, Snohomish.
Oh, okay.
And then was there for 4 years.
Big Brothers and Big Sisters. Can you explain that program a little bit real quick?
It's a mentoring program where what you have is kids who really don't have either a prominent male figure in their household or female, depending upon which it is. So they match adults that want to mentor kids, and they're more friends as opposed to just mentors. They do a lot more together. They go out. They become really good friends. It gives them that trusted adult that a lot of kids really don't even have now.
Yeah, I was a big brother to a young boy in Seattle for a couple of years, and it was a great experience. He was a really good kid. He was an African American kid that was being raised in the central area in Seattle, and I think I was his big brother for about 3 or 4 years. And,
Yeah.
It's a lot of responsibility you feel like you always feel concerned about what he's doing and how he's doing and that sort of thing. But it's a worthwhile thing to
Yeah,
do.
it's a great program, and it's we don't have that in Kitsap, so it's
We don't.
one of the things that we're kind of working on to see if we can
Yeah.
bring it over.
Yeah, that's I didn't realize we didn't have that kind of. Is that a national organization?
Yeah, it's a national organization, and right now Pierce County is the closest Big Brothers Big Sisters
Yeah.
office.
Okay. So got out of college at Oregon State, majored in something having nothing to do with nonprofit
That's right.
organizations, but right away went to work for the Boy Scouts and then went to work for Big Brothers up in Everett,
Yeah.
Everett area. Did you move up there and live up there?
No, we were. I lived in basically South Seattle, and was working up in Everett. And then one night when we were coming home from church, we had, I had both my all three kids in a van, and somebody put a 44 millimeter shell on the rear quarter panel of the van.
Wow.
And we decided it was time to move.
Yeah.
And my cousin, her husband had just taken over for a Presbyterian church in Gig Harbor, so we came down, fell in love with Gig Harbor, and decided we would move.
Uh-huh. So that must have meant you had to get another job.
Yeah.
So what'd you do after that?
Went to work as a development director for the Gig Harbor Historical Society.
Oh, okay. Another nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did this all lead to you working for United Way?
When I've worked with United Way within the Boy Scouts, within every organization
Right.
that I've been in.
Right.
And an opportunity came up when my kids were in high school. They were all in sports, and the majority of their events were on the peninsula.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took the opportunity and came in and interviewed and took the job. I was
What's United Way?
United Way of Kitsap County.
Oh, okay. So
'Cause
that,
yeah.
what year would that be?
2008 was when I started.
Okay, so about 10 years ago.
Yeah,
So you've been at Kitsap United Way for 10 years.
yeah.
Right. And you worked for the former director, and I'm forgetting his name.
Dave Foote.
Dave Foote.
Yeah.
Who was here a long time and did
Yeah,
a
he
good
was
job.
here 13 years, and then he retired when he decided he wanted to spend more time at home.
Got that new building built downtown.
Yep.
Yeah, I know. I was mayor during some of that time and worked a lot with David. Did a good job. What do you do? I know you're the executive director. What's your main job at United Way? What do you do, Carl?
Main job is to really inform people what we're doing in the community, because about 8 years ago we changed from being a money in, money out organization to community impact. And when we switched to community impact, what that does is we're working on the
Okay, so before
yeah,
you got into community impact, you would ask people for money, organizations, individuals, and they'd
Yeah.
give it to you, and then you disperse it out to charities.
correct,
Right. And now you're doing something called community impact.
correct.
What's the difference?
The difference is we're working on the absolute root causes of intergenerational poverty, as opposed to working with just 32 organizations. We work with as many organizations in the community as we can to work on the homeless issue. We're working with the Homes for All group, and there's about 28 organizations involved in that. We're working with the Kitsap Mental Health on their project. So we're working within the homeless community to try to solve that problem so we don't end up with, the same issues that they have in King County. And then,
Boy, I worked in downtown Seattle when I was working for the King County Boys and Girls Club in the mid-'80s and up until the mid-'90s. And our office was on, so that's been 30 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And our office was on First and Cherry right downtown. And we could see homeless problems beginning, and they didn't do anything about it. And it got to be a crisis, which it is today.
yeah,
And it was only because they didn't begin dealing with it when it first got started.
yeah.
And we're starting to see more homelessness here, right?
Correct. And we don't really have a homeless problem. We have a housing problem
Oh, that's interesting.
because
Affordable housing.
affordable housing problem. The average rent in Kitsap County has gone up 48%.
So you think most of the homeless people that we have want someplace to live?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they all have an income. They just don't have an income that can rent an apartment in Kitsap County. The
Why,
average
how do
rent,
they have an income? Most of them, are they working?
Social Security, disability, you know, that form of income there, you know, the average income is right around $700 a month, $600 a
Okay.
month, and the average rent is $1,200.
Right. The average rent in Kitsap County now is
Yeah.
$1,200.
Yeah,
And that's gone up really fast in the last couple of years.
yeah, 48%,
So we don't have a homeless problem, we have a housing problem,
correct.
okay? And you're working on that.
Yeah,
right?
we're working within,
Would you say that's one of your top priorities at United Way?
it is one of the really big priorities. The second one is working within our collaboration with the Community Foundation and the Squamish Tribe, Kitsap Strong.
Yeah.
We created that 7 years ago, and it's done amazing work within the community to help people understand childhood trauma and try to create a trauma-sensitive community to where people are changing the way they think about what's happening from what's wrong with you to what happened to you. And once you start treating people a little differently, understanding that they grew up within a certain, you know, with childhood trauma, and childhood trauma is not necessarily like becoming sick or ill. It's just something you grew up with and the way your brain was formed. And when you're treated differently and understand where you're coming from, then you start realizing your value and start building your resiliency, and we don't end up with kids becoming shooters.
Yeah. You know, I was an orphan kid myself, and they don't call them orphanages anymore. But my dad dropped us off, my brother and sister and I, in an orphanage in New Orleans, Louisiana. And I was 6, and my brother was 4.5, and my sister was 3. And we never saw him again. And the rest of our lives, until we became adults, we were living in foster care and other homes. And for us, by and large, the system worked. We were very fortunate. We got into one family that kept us for quite a few years. And, you know, without that, you know, who knows what would have happened to us. But we got into the state federal system as really young kids, and a lot of good caring people helped us out, and it worked. I don't know what would have happened to us if we hadn't had that.
And that's not necessarily how it always works.
No, I'm well aware of that. My work at Boys and Girls Club for 30 years, you know, we learned a lot about, I've learned a lot about that issue. And so I really like the Kitsap Strong idea. I wish more people in the community kind of understood it. It's a little complicated, right? I mean, it's a collaboration between the Kitsap Foundation and the United Way and
the Squamish Tribe,
and
then also the Kitsap Mental Health, or Kitsap Health Department. They provide, and then now we've been, Olympic College has joined in because we've created Graduate Strong. And the reason why we did that is we have a great graduation rate of 82%. But out of that 80,
where Olympic College does?
No, in Kitsap County for high school. But out of that 82%, only 30%.
That's pretty high.
Yeah, but only 30% of that group are going on to get any post-secondary education.
Oh, because I think the state average is 30% dropout.
Yeah, we have a really great graduation rate. The problem is going from high school to post-secondary. 70% of the jobs are requiring some sort of post-secondary education.
Right.
So we have to move the 30% up. And in order to get that to happen, we need to move the graduation rate up to around 90%, and then work on both of those, but get kids ready so that when they graduate high school, they go on to some post-secondary education, they can actually have a living wage job.
Yeah.
You can't survive on minimum wage.
Is Kitsap Strong actually working with young children? Are they working with the kids and providing these services themselves, or are they educating, or what's their main mission?
Well, we've got two. Within Kitsap Strong, our main mission is to create a trauma-sensitive community through education, as well as working with nonprofits and businesses so they start.
Trauma-sensitive community.
Correct.
What does that mean?
That means that people are starting to be more sensitive to each other. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's not a lot of compassion in the country nowadays towards people if you disagree.
I think I've noticed that.
And so we're trying to create a community where people really respect each other, understand each other. And the other part is that 35% of the kids in the county don't really have a trusted adult in their life that
35%?
that they can confide in.
Does that mean they're not living with an adult, or
No, that means they don't have an adult that they can actually trust to be able to say whatever,
Wow.
what's bothering them without being judged.
how much of a youth homeless situation do we have? Kids not,
It's fairly high. It's not as high as anywhere else, but luckily we've got Coffee Oasis working
right,
in that arena to help with that
Right.
problem.
yeah. So your job as the executive director of United Way is to meet with all these various groups and to represent United Way, right? Is that
Correct.
what you're saying? How big a staff do you have at United Way?
We have 5 full-time employees. I've got 1 director of
Well,
research
that's not a
development.
big staff,
No, we run very lean,
right?
and
And you have a board of directors?
yes, we have 15 on the board right now.
15 on the board.
And we're always looking for more community members that would like to be on the board and help us within the community.
Yeah, I'm sure a strong board. I know the Kitsap, I worked a lot with Seattle King County United Way, and boy, they had a power board. They
Yeah.
had, I think Gates was very involved with United Way, or Gates's mother was very involved with United Way. Mary Gates was her
Yeah.
name. She's since passed away, but if Mary Gates called you do something for United Way, go out and make a speech or do something, you did it.
Yeah,
And I think they're one of the most successful United Ways in the country.
they were the largest United Way in the country until United Way went worldwide, and now that is, Toronto is actually taking
Oh,
over.
are they?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, it used to be at Boeing, pretty much required all their employees to make a donation to United Way.
Yeah,
And I don't know if they still do that, but that was
Yeah.
an understood thing. If you're going to work at Boeing, you gave to United Way.
yeah, and a lot of that still is, but what's happening is we have the transition from the baby boomers who were used to giving, $50, $60 a paycheck, and now you've got new entry-level employees that aren't making anywhere near what they made, so they're giving like $4 and $5 a paycheck. So
Oh.
across the nonprofit world, donations are going down, and a lot of it has to do with the tax reform, where now you used to give to be able to get that tax write-off, and now you don't have to do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of drop-off through that.
In the old days, United Way was, and I'm going to date myself now, United Way was called the community chest,
Correct.
right? And you just gave to this big organization called the community chest, and then the community chest made the determination about giving money out, right?
Yeah,
But now, that's all changed.
yeah,
You have the designated gift,
correct.
right? So if I'm going to donate to United Way, I can designate to you, United Way, who I want you to give my money to.
Correct.
So that's really changed the whole concept of United Way, right? I mean, in many ways.
Yeah, and then also the advent of basically online giving, to where people are now choosing
Right.
to give individually online. And so that's where a lot of the nonprofits that we used to support are now getting support in other areas. And so we're trying to work.
Well, the foundation has that great give. You
Yeah.
and the foundation both.
Yeah.
And on one day, I mean, you're raising over $1 million, right?
Yeah, and that was the main reason why we partnered and became the major sponsor for the Great Give, is to make sure that nonprofits had the money that they needed to operate, and that way we could support, we can support them through that, and then also work on our individual community impact to try to make Kitsap the best place to live.
Right. But if people are designating their donation for their favorite charity,
Yeah,
then some charities are going to get a lot more money just because they're more popular, they're better known, yada, yada. And then some of the lesser known but still important charities are kind of being left out. How do you manage that?
that's the key question we're trying to figure out right now, because if you look at the Great Give, the Humane Society is always at the top. And some of the more important, some of the more organizations that people really don't understand what they do are down at the bottom. So a lot of it has to do with we need to
People
start.
don't realize that probably the most popular charity in Kitsap County is the Humane Society.
Yeah, by far.
And I was on the board of the Humane Society, and I'm still I'm an ambassador, because I fundamentally believe in that for every animal that's given out to a family or a person, then there's a happy person, a happy family, and that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
I get I get why it's important. We have animals ourselves, so I
Yeah.
get that. But when people can designate to that, then there are other little charities, other organizations that are doing just great work, but they're not getting the amount of designated funds, right? So
Yeah.
that's an issue.
Yeah, it is, and what you look at is the Humane Society does get a lot of that, but if you don't take care of the people to take care of the animals, then you kind of have to figure it out a
Right.
different way. So we're working to get people to understand some of the smaller organizations. When we started Kitsap Strong, we gave out 28 grants, $4,000 each, to be able to just have people attend to learn about neurosciences and brain development and adverse childhood experiences. And we found some amazing small organizations that we wanted to make sure they could do that. So there were no issues with, we would give them the money and they were like, well, what do we have to do for it? Show up, learn, and that's it.
Right. How many different nonprofit organizations do you support at United Way?
That's a really good question because we're working in so many different areas.
Right.
And so it's anybody that's working in the human services area, we're supporting to one way or another through the convenings that we try to bring people together. When we get together, we don't come in with an agenda on what we're looking for. We want to do whatever is best within the community and figure out how do we do that. And when we're at a certain area, who's not at the table that should be there? Who can we bring in that will be able to give us a lot more weight in what's going on?
In the old days, and maybe this has all changed, Carl, that United Way would take in a pot of money,
Yeah.
and then they would make allocations out to all the various nonprofit organizations.
Yeah.
Do you guys still do that? Do you and how, if you do, how do you determine who gets how much money?
No, we don't. We no longer do the grant process. We basically put our funding out through the Kitsap Strong area, and so we actually go out and fund initiatives that our board feels really important about and that will really make a difference in the community.
So does United Way that way establish priorities?
Correct. Yeah.
The thing like kids, seniors, disabled. Do you do that? Do you have,
The local board of directors determines what the main needs are within each county. Each United Way is independent. We rely on United Way Worldwide basically for branding, messaging, and then within each local jurisdiction. So for us, Kitsap County, every dollar we raise in Kitsap County stays in Kitsap County.
how much do you raise in Kitsap County?
Last year was right around $700,000.
Okay, all right.
And
If I'm running a nonprofit organization, say the local Boys and Girls Club, do I make an application to United Way for the money I'd like to have the United Way give me? Do
No.
they apply?
no, we don't have that process anymore.
Okay, they used to.
Yeah, we changed that about 8 years ago, right about the time sequestration hit and the recession hit. At that point, we had to reassess what was going on, and at that point, United Way Worldwide was recommending going to community impact.
Okay.
And because what we're trying to do is get people to understand we need to make the community better and find out and solve the intergenerational poverty.
Okay.
And
So
why are
that's
people
become
homeless?
the priority of
Yeah.
United Way, right?
Yeah.
Does every county have a United Way?
Every zip code has a United Way. So
Oh, they do?
there are some that have more than one county. And so like within the Washington area, majority is one county, but some of the smaller ones are starting to merge. And that's just because the admin costs, we want to keep those as low as we possibly
Does
can.
Mason County have a United Way?
They do,
They do.
yeah. There's a very smaller United
And is
Way.
there one up in Port Townsend area?
Yeah, Clallam County has one. Their United Way is actually in conjunction with their community foundation, so they're one organization.
Oh, okay.
And the same within Jefferson County. The difference in Jefferson County is they were never big enough to become a United Way, so they were United Good Neighbors,
Oh,
which was the previous name from
that
United
was an
Way.
old name.
Yeah.
Right, the United Good Neighbors. Is there a national United Way organization?
Yeah, there's a United Way Worldwide, which represents all the United Ways in the world.
Wow.
United Way of America is the 1,800 plus United Ways within the United States.
Right.
We're growing fast around the world. We're actually having one starting in Moscow. One of the largest United Ways will be in South Korea, because that is, the United Way in South Korea is the only nonprofit organization within South Korea.
If I was to ask you in 20 words or less to describe what United Way is, what do you say?
We fight for the health, education, and financial stability of everyone in Kitsap County. And the main reason is, if you're working only to help within the homeless area, you're leaving other groups out.
Right.
So our main thing is to help those that have money. If everybody's doing well, then everybody's doing well. And
Gosh, we're running out of time already, but a couple of questions I have. Do the local governments and the shipyard, do they participate in supporting United Way?
Kitsap County is amazing support. All the cities are great support.
Right.
The
Do
shipyard.
they run internal
Yes.
campaigns?
Yeah, they do.
Good.
Yeah, the shipyard, on the other hand, is handled by the combined federal campaign, which is a federal campaign, and it's going as well as the federal government is.
Well, that's an interesting answer. I think I'll leave that one alone for now. Do you determine, set a goal every year for how much money you're going to raise?
We don't really want to set a goal. Our main goal is to increase the number of people that donate to United Way.
Okay.
And whether they donate $1 or $100.
How many donors do you have now, usually?
We're over 1,000 donors,
Okay.
and so we'd like to grow that
Yeah.
and continue it going.
Well, we're growing like heck here in this county right now,
Yeah.
so I would hope so. Carl, this program's about leaders, and you're a community leader. How would you describe your leadership style?
My leadership style is very open. I want people to be able to do their job. I'm not going to micromanage what they do. If they have a problem, then come in with a problem and a solution, and we'll figure out whether it's going to work or not.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, there's always plan B or plan C to eventually get it done.
Okay. Is there anything I have not asked you that you want to say to the public today?
Well, right now we're going to have an issue with our 211 call center, because it's housed with Kitsap Mental Health and the Crisis Helpline. That is being relocated to Everett, so we're going to have to bring 211 in-house.
Okay.
That's something we've
So the
not thought
crisis
about.
center's going away, and you're replacing it with this 211 program.
No, they've been together. 211's
Oh,
always been there.
okay.
211 is a social services hotline.
Okay.
And so what we're doing is we have to separate the two out, and because they've been together since the
Okay.
90s. And so we have to figure out a way to bring the 211 call center into United Way, because we don't want to lose that
No,
hotline within Kitsap.
We don't. Listen, Carl, I appreciate our conversation. I'm a big fan of United Way. I'm a big believer in it. I know you have incredible impact in the community. It's been good to
Great.
have you here today.
Thank you for inviting me. It was
You're
great.
welcome. So this has been a conversation with a community leader, hosted by Leadership Kitsap, and we'll see you next time with another leader in our community.
Leadership Kitsap is our community's civic leadership program. Leadership Kitsap fosters and empowers educated, prepared, and engaged community leaders. For over 25 years, we have cultivated leaders that work collaboratively to create positive change, dedicated to making our community a better place to work and live. We expose our class to Kitsap's leaders across public, private, and nonprofit sectors. We're happy to bring many of the conversations with these leaders to you. Strong leaders build strong communities.